Well, good morning and welcome once again to Rising. We have a great show for you today. It is Wednesday morning, although all morning I was thinking it was Thursday. This is a very slow-moving, glacially moving week.
That was me last week. I was going to say we matched today.
You had some
I had some difficulties this morning.
You spilled coffee.
I spilled coffee all
on
over my
train.
dress. Luckily, it's dark. I had a nosebleed. It's because of my allergies. I'm using too much Flonase.
We're fighting.
We're fighting for our lives.
Every day, fighting for you, the viewers.
And the weather, it's actually decent today, and it's going to hopefully get warmer so I don't have to suffer anymore.
I am just heartbroken that my girl, Princess Jasmine, will not be taking
What? They're still counting the ballots in
No.
Dallas. Are you nuts? They're still counting.
It's over.
We're going to talk about that. Coming up on Rising, Senator Richard Blumenthal told reporters that he fears the U.S. may be putting boots on the ground in Iran.
Plus, Texas State Representative James Talarico defeated Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Did you hear that, Lindsey?
Jasmine Crockett still wants those Dallas ballots counted.
In the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate.
And CBS is reporting that the DOJ is removing Epstein files that were previously made public, but the DOJ argues that their analysis is flawed. But first, Robby, what is on your radar today?
Alrighty, well, the Trump administration continues to try to sell the American people an Israeli-led U.S. strikes on Iran that have killed the Ayatollah and dozens of other high-ranking government figures, bringing a murderous and extremist regime to its knees. But some questions still remain for us, and the administration has a duty to provide answers. President Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, Speaker Johnson have all offered different and, at times, frankly, conflicting justifications for this war. Now, patriotic conservative Americans, MAGA, America First, whatever you want to call Trump supporters, look, there's a great deal of agreement that the Ayatollah is evil and deserved to die, and that the world will be well rid of a regime that hates America and also hates Israel. I'm following so far, but there are questions, even among the MAGA faithful, about whether this strike is in America's best interests. Now, the Daily Wire's Matt Walsh, for instance, is a leading conservative pundit and Trump supporter who's not yet sold. He's been posting on X a lot about this, even drawing a response from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. He writes, "I supported the Venezuela operation and I'm on board with acquiring Greenland because they both passed the only litmus test I care about. Will it be a net benefit to the United States? Venezuela and Greenland are low risk, high reward, big wins for our people. We gain much and lose little or nothing. Easy call, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not actually an isolationist. I'm just an America First conservative in the strictest sense of the term. Does the benefit for America outweigh the cost? It must, or it's a bad policy. That's one of my absolute core political principles, always has been. But with this Iran thing, I don't see how the math works in our favor, or at least it seems highly unlikely it will work in our favor. And so I'm against it. If that puts me at odds with the administration and with much of the conservative commentariat, so be it, but I have to stick with what I believe." My take, he's got a point. Now, Trump can overcome this, but he has to actually explain what we're doing. So let's walk through it. Is this about crippling Iran's nuclear capabilities? If so, well, I thought we just did that several months ago. Did we need to decapitate the regime and blow up a school full of children to accomplish it? Or is it about regime change? If so, why does the administration keep denying that it's a regime change war? Is it just because that term in particular is so unpopular with the American people? But that is the goal? If so, that's rank dishonesty. Is it about our defense? Or is it about Israel's defense? This seems like the most actually likely explanation, but if it's just about a pressing threat to Israel and not the U.S., then surely Trump should be asking Congress to vote to approve military action. The president can act unilaterally only when the U.S. is threatened, not when some other country is threatened. Then there are questions about the duration of this conflict. Are we in it until the regime falls? Until there's new leadership we can work with? Until there's a deal in place? Until Israel says so? Are we committing ground troops? How many American servicemen are expected to die in retaliatory strikes across the globe? Should we really expect no reaction from Iranian proxy groups? From China? The administration is going to need to come up with better answers to these questions because the American people do not want us to get involved in another endless war in the Middle East for good reason. Trump ran on no new wars. Things change, but this is a new war. If he wants it, he's got to sell it, particularly to his millennial supporters who have a permanent Iraq war fatigue. I was looking at polling numbers, approval of this strike. Lowest group is people in our age range because we remember Iraq most accurately. Look, again, I've said this with so many of the military interventions Trump has undertaken this term. I am prepared to be sold. I'm not unreasonable. I also want totalitarian regimes to fall all around the globe. So sell me that this is a good idea. Sell Congress, really, is what should be happening. That's not happening. Sell me, and I'm hearing way too many different and conflicting justifications. Like, Israel was going to be attacked because they were fighting with Iran, and so we had to do something, is very different from we're trying to stop them from getting a nuke, which we hear constantly, and did that require killing everyone in leadership there? And we would like to see a different regime take over. I saw Trump say yesterday, like, worst case scenario, people just as bad take over after this. And I'm sorry, but that is not the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is we start world war. It's like Russia or China do retaliatory nuking of us. That's the worst case scenario. Or a madman comes to power who, sends an army after Israel or something. Like, there are worst case scenarios. Are they likely? No. Maybe the Trump administration knows they're impossible, actually, but I can certainly think of worse outcomes than this. And if he thinks the worst outcome is basically this is all for naught and it's just as bad, well, okay, that's not exactly selling me on it either.
So you and I, for the audience, we do a hit on News Nation on Wednesdays, and so ours was canceled this morning because Hegseth was speaking. So I listened to Hegseth, his presser, and speaking of China and Russia, what I took away from that was that there's no intention to try to even say things that would agitate China or Russia in this moment, because a reporter asked, do you have anything to say about China and Russia being the biggest supporters of Iran being armed in this way? And they were like, our problems with Iran. So I totally get that strategically, but also when you say about expanding into a bigger conflict, America understands all three of these powers and why we wouldn't want to go that far, and why they wouldn't want to go that far. I think what I also got from that presser was that this war is nowhere near over. One thing that stuck with me is Hegseth saying this will be done when America decides it's over. And without a clear path of why it started, we're not understanding why it needs to last this long. There's also this extra layer of having a bunch of colleagues that are in the travel space, because that's another thing that I do, that are in these Middle Eastern countries, and there was no exit strategy. There are people that were given the State Department number that are calling to find out there's nothing that they can do. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching that happen to so many people that I see working, just trying to bridge the gap between cultures, that are over there trying to get back to the U.S. And you would think that, no one needs a forewarning that you're going to attack Iran, but at least you think you would have coordinated to have an exit strategy for some of these Americans that are in several places across the Middle East that would like to get home, that you're seeing in a hysterical state right now, not understanding what's going on. Right now we have 50,000 troops and more than 200 aircraft in Iran, and some people are not calling this a war. And I think that we need to come to terms that we have started an endless war because we're not given a date. We're getting a lot of pushback that they don't have to give a date, they don't have to give exacts. But like you said, if we're watching graves being built for more than 100 kids that were killed at a school, we need to understand that, and that was asked about in the presser too, and they said they're investigating it. And the reporter pushed back that from Saturday until now, there's no understanding of whether that was a clear target or an accident that we can respond to. And so I think there's so much confusion, that being one of the biggest things for me. Nothing wrong with taking out a dictator and authoritarian that was killing civilians, but there is a whole other layer of now being engaged in this conflict where we're watching innocent people being killed with no clear understanding of what capabilities were there, when obviously the nuclear capabilities were obliterated last summer, so there was no imminent threat. But now we're understanding that Israel had a plan to attack Iran to protect themselves, and Iran might have struck back, and that's why the U.S. felt like they needed to get involved. And so, there's a lot of conversation around what that means for the future of how we figure out international conflict, if it has to do with what other countries want to do.
Up next, we will continue discussing the latest developments with Iran, including remarks given by Pete Hegseth that we were just alluding to earlier this morning. We'll be right back with more details. Top officials from the Trump administration, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, held a classified briefing on the U.S.-Iran conflict with senators on Tuesday. This comes as both chambers of Congress are set to vote on a war powers resolution to block the president from using further military force against Iran.
Many Democrat lawmakers appeared discouraged by what they heard at Tuesday's briefing. Here was Senator Richard Blumenthal expressing his concerns.
I am more fearful than ever after this briefing that we may be putting boots on the ground. and that troops from the United States may be necessary to accomplish objectives that the administration seems to have.
Now, those concerns were echoed by Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. Let's watch.
It is so much worse than you thought. You are right to be worried. Trump administration has no plan in Iran. This illegal war is based on lies, and it was launched without any imminent threat to our nation. Donald Trump still hasn't given a single clear reason for this war, and he seems to have no plan for how to end it either.
The Senate is expected to vote on the War Powers Resolution on Wednesday, followed by the House on Thursday. But even if the resolution were able to clear both chambers, President Trump could still veto it, and a 2/3 majority would be needed to override that veto.
Now, some Republicans did respond more positively to the latest updates. Senator Lindsey Graham even called for further action, urging President Trump to join Israel in conducting strikes against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Here was Graham after the briefing.
President Trump, come up with a new operation called Simplify. Fly with Israel and go after Hezbollah, who has American blood on its hands. Not only take the mothership of Iran down, also take the proxy of Hezbollah, settle the score, even the account.
And just this morning, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave another update, making it clear that the administration has no plans of slowing down or stopping. Let's take a look at that.
More and larger waves are coming. We are just getting started. We are accelerating, not decelerating. Iran's capabilities are evaporating by the hour, while American strength grows fiercer, smarter, and utterly dominant. The enemy can no longer shoot the volume of missiles they once did, not even close. And the chairman will lay out some of those percentages. So our air defenses and that of our allies have plenty of runway. We can sustain this fight easily for as long as we need to.
Meanwhile, the CIA is reportedly working with Kurdish forces in Iran with the hopes of sparking an uprising. An article from CNN says the Trump administration has been in active discussions with Iranian opposition groups and Kurdish leaders in Iraq about providing them with military support, the sources said. Iranian Kurdish armed groups have thousands of forces operating along the Iraq-Iran border, primarily in Iraq's Kurdistan region. Several of the groups released public statements since the beginning of the war, hinting at imminent action and urging Iranian military forces to defect. This war powers vote, I mean, again, this is backwards. It's not, right. The Senate should not be voting to stop a war. They're supposed to vote to authorize the war in the first place. So Trump can veto the war powers resolution, but if it's operating the way our framers intended, he wouldn't be acting at all, because we hadn't been attacked without congressional approval. I listened to Hegseth a little bit this morning. You were just saying you did the same, and I find myself very frustrated listening to him because he's describing these awesome, like a kid describing a Lego set, like, we blew up their stuff, it's amazing, boom, pow, wow. And like, what are you talking about? I know that we have an amazing Air Force. I know that our military capabilities are unmatched throughout the world. It is not, this is no miracle or surprise that we're able to precisely target and kill huge numbers of enemy, high-ranking enemy officials. But that has never before in history resulted in, on its own, the ouster of one government in favor of a government we preferred. That has always required ground forces. Unless you're about to tell me that we are going to precisely target and kill like every single person who holds any position of authority in the Iranian government down to the janitor, eventually someone is going to come in and helping the Kurds take over. That sounds like getting very involved. Deeply involved on something we didn't vote for and we didn't really discuss. And they didn't really attack us.
And you talked about Congress and skipping over them. That's how the U.S. law works, right? We're supposed to go through Congress.
Lindsey Graham hasn't even had enough of it.
Lindsey Graham is like salivating. So watching that was like exactly what we talk about the old, regime, the old guard versus the new guard. Nobody wants to be in endless wars, no matter which side of the aisle you fall on. You're seeing, for the most part, Elizabeth Warren with her perspective. You see Matt Walsh with his perspective. Even if they have two different targets, the end goal is that this is not something that we're interested in pursuing. So not only are we violating Congress by skipping over them, we're violating international law because there's a big difference between a war of necessity and a war by choice. And so because there hasn't been a clear laid out plan of why we needed to act right now, I mean, now we're in an issue where we're having Turkish air being protected by NATO. And so what does that mean for us as far as not getting involved and not putting boots on the ground? How do we avoid that? We're like in too far deep now that we can't pull back and say, forget it. Even though people are saying, let's call for a ceasefire and try to fix this. I'm hearing a lot of conversation about the fact that Iran was not willing to come to the table and negotiate. And that is what the president and his administration are saying, that they weren't able to negotiate in good faith, and Jared Kushner went over there and tried their best. But the interesting thing is
I see value, and frankly, I see value to that because I hope the next person knows that if you don't play ball, you're going to get blown up. And there is a value in that.
Well, also, I wish that President Trump would have known that we have been in an Iran nuclear deal, which you say that he didn't like, but it still was stopping them from having 90% of that uranium. If we were so concerned about nuclear bombs, they didn't have the power to create one. And we stopped them, and it was largely effective to unbiased communities that oversaw this, including the president, who looked at it and said, yeah, technically they're abiding by this before he ripped it up to shreds.
But that agreement was good for the current regime. And that agreement coming out of no longer being applicable has created a bad economic situation in Iran that is creating instability and dissatisfaction among the people. So having the agreement in place, that's why we need to understand the priorities. Because if we have agreement like that in place, it will stabilize the regime. Because it will stabilize, it removes sanctions and creates favorable economic conditions.
Right.
Which is win for us, win for them. But so obviously we don't want that if our goal is to replace their government.
Creating nuclear
That's
weapons.
what I'm saying. So we have to know whether we just want the government out at all costs, in which case...
That's a regime change that we're saying we don't want.
In which case the Bush people were more honest about this. They made their case to the American people and to the rest of the world and got authorization for it. And we're just being dishonest about what we're doing. If it's really about stopping their nukes, but we don't really care if the regime stays in power, then yes, a deal is the main thing. If it's about defense of ourselves, I don't know. And Marco Rubio said it one way. Hegseth is mostly just talking about how cool it is that everything's blowing up. And Trump has also been, it's confusing.
But you always talk about the fact that America has to negotiate or have conversations with countries that they wholly don't agree with. So Iran could fall on the list of those countries. And if the real goal is what we've been told for months, is that they're not coming to terms about nuclear capabilities, then we should not be taking this route. This doesn't make sense for a regime change because the goal was already settled and they weren't making they weren't progressing nuclear capabilities. So now we took them back by ripping up that Iran nuclear deal and circled back to the point A because they started trying to build nuclear weapons again. And now we're demolishing nuclear sites where they're trying to build and going back in a circle to make a deal that once existed in 2015. A new report alleges that the DOJ is removing tens of thousands of pages from the currently available Epstein files. We're going to talk about that. Don't go anywhere. Report from CBS News alleges that the DOJ has been taking down tens of thousands of files related to Jeffrey Epstein that were previously made public.
According to CBS, right now about 2.7 million pages from the Epstein files have been made public, which is lower than the initial estimate of 3 million, and a number that their analysis shows is fluctuating. So far, they estimate the DOJ has taken down more than 47,000 files, many in response to criticism over survivors' personal information and photos, but the report also cites a call log with all of its names redacted and images of Epstein's jail cell, where investigators say that he hanged himself. Those were both taken down. Now, the DOJ responded to the allegations in a combative way, telling CBS that their analysis appears to be fundamentally flawed, and they said the department has not deleted any files from the library, but they note that more than 47,000 files are offline for further review and would be ready to be republished later this week. CBS did admit that they appeared to be putting some files back up.
Despite their dismissal of the CBS analysis, the fact that the DOJ would take down any previously published files is stirring theories online, of course. The Lincoln Project writing on X, this is a cover-up. And House Democrats on the Oversight Committee asking in their own post, why does the DOJ continue to take down Epstein files? Who is directing this? Who are they protecting? That committee continues to investigate high-profile figures named in the documents. You'll remember last week the Clintons gave their testimony in a closed-door session, and just yesterday, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick volunteered to testify before the committee. That's expected to happen in the coming weeks. And committee chair James Comer says, like the Clintons, a transcript of his testimony will also be released.
The Democratic Party has Epstein derangement syndrome.
Nope, you're not
They
making
have
up a term.
Epstein derangement syndrome. Look, they took down some of the files they published because everybody got mad at them because alleged survivors, photos were
They took down some redacted call logs and the information from Epstein's jail
make
cell.
anyone happy here.
No, you can't not follow the law. The law is release everything. You still haven't released 2 million files and you're taking 65,000 pages away, 47,000 documents. No, do your job, follow the law. It doesn't
These
have to be
same
this
people
sloppy.
yelled at them for revealing private information about alleged victims, and it's like, are we gonna share everything or not? Are we protecting people's feelings or not?
Are we going to have clear order or not? Is the FBI going to do its job and redact important information and not try to protect certain people that are wealthy and happen to be powerful men? Or are they going to move forward and do their job and provide it to the DOJ and allow the DOJ?
How can you possibly... I don't think this task can actually be done perfectly. The act of declassifying and determining and going through 3 million pages and making sure you get out there every shred of information, no matter how irrelevant or made up or false, to everyone's satisfaction, but without exposing anyone who was allegedly harmed by Epstein to any further psychological harm, seems like a task that is bound to be screwed up sometimes in some ways.
Sometimes jobs are hard. The FBI and DOJ have a job. Certain things that people want re-released or released in the first place are flight logs, prison surveillance footage, investigative memos, photos from Epstein's homes and island. Don't take those things off because it looks like, okay, they have removed some things and people have questions about, of course, protect any survivors. That was from the beginning. I think Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna were both saying, please make sure we're protecting survivors in all of this. No, I'm not going to stand here while you sit here and call women who are accusing Jeffrey Epstein of doing criminal activity to them, which he's been convicted of already, of prostitution of minors, liars. That's not appropriate.
They're lying when they suggest other people are involved and provide no evidence.
Because which basis, though? Which basis? They don't have to. A victim does not have to provide evidence to tell you that more people were involved if they were a child that got taken advantage of. You don't. But the American public has asked for transparency in this, and so the FBI and DOJ have to follow the law. No, we haven't. Every file is not released yet, and so there shouldn't be any adamant perspective coming from not releasing this stuff when the American public on both sides has called for the release of this stuff. At least try to do it as little sloppily as you can. And the FBI has had a hard time doing that. Mind you, Cash Patel over there partying, drinking beer.
How about the woman who
out of the
said
country
that Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump sexually assaulted her together in South Carolina, a place that neither of them ever visited, and we know that to be the case? Can I call that person a liar?
If you have an example of one person that lied about sexual assault, that doesn't mean that every person that lied connected to Epstein of sexual assault is. I mean, every person connected to
I didn't say they lied about Epstein. No, I mean they lied about their ages when they encountered Epstein, and they initially said nothing wrong happened, and then they changed their stories years later.
And if the law requires the investigation to be transparent, let's transparently release the files. You've been calling for this thing to end. The only way that it can end is if they stop playing games and deleting stuff like jail cell information and release everything.
It baffles me that more people can't see that this is a witch hunt and a conspiracy theory out to get Trump, and the fools in MAGA who did not perceive that this is just a political thing Democrats are pursuing to embarrass Trump for, even though he's guilty of absolutely nothing connected to Epstein.
He wouldn't be embarrassed any less or more than Hillary and Bill Clinton, and they seem like they're going to be fine. So he can go up there and testify.
They didn't do anything wrong either.
So then he shouldn't be worried about it. That's the top level of embarrassment. He'll be fine.
I'm not worried on his behalf. I'm just think it's all
a witch hunt is not a successful witch hunt if that's the only thing that happens. You have to testify and tell the truth.
Okay, well, plenty of people are suffering as a result of this, are facing consequences as a result of this never-ending investigation and document dump. And
if a private company decides to let somebody go because they have poor moral judgment, they're allowed to do that.
If a private company lets someone go because the government published uncorroborated, anonymous lies about them.
No, showed
I
email
think
of constant
that's maybe
communication
different.
with somebody who's a known predator. That's what it showed. So you have bad judgment. We don't want you to work here. That's okay. And if there were financial criminal activities going on with Epstein that have nothing to do with, any of this cabal that you're talking about, that's still a crime. You got to go.
So cancel culture is good again.
It's not
back on
who's
the cancel
canceling.
culture.
You committed a crime. Putting people in prison because they commit
Sending
crimes
an email
is
to
good.
Jeffrey Epstein is not a crime.
No. Colleges and businesses are allowed
These
to
people
fire
being
whoever
fired,
they want.
they're
or step away from their
no
job.
one who's being fired, the people you're referencing, has been even alleged to have committed a crime, let alone convicted of committing a crime. The only person convicted, prosecuted for any crime here is Jeffrey Epstein, and now these British people for financial crimes. And that's fine. I don't care. Hang them. I don't care. Don't really hang them, obviously, but throw the book at them is what I meant. But I don't know what that has to do with what we're talking about.
We got a wrap. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem was grilled by lawmakers on Capitol Hill yesterday as she continues to deal with outrage over ICE operations in Minnesota. We're going to recap that next in My Lens.
All right, Lindsay, what's in your lens today?
We're talking about Kristi Noem. So when the Secretary of Homeland Security uses the phrase domestic terrorism, it carries enormous weight. It shapes headlines. It frames public opinion. And for families grieving a loved one, it can define how the country remembers them. Now, this week, Kristi Noem appeared before Congress for the first time since the immigration enforcement surge in Minneapolis. She was pressed by Amy Klobuchar about comments she made in the immediate aftermath of two fatal shootings involving U.S. citizens Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Here's what Senator Klobuchar asked her.
After the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, when I spoke to Alex's parents, they told me that you calling him a domestic terrorist, this was directly from them, the day after he was killed, a nurse in our VA, Alex, one of the most hurtful things they could ever imagine was said by you about their son. Do you have anything you want to say to Alex Preddy's parents?
Now here's how Secretary Noem responded.
We were relying in the hours after that incident that was so horrific on information we were getting from the ground from our
I
agents.
just asked if you had
But I would
anything you wanted to say to the
but I would
parents
say
or to the family
that's
of
what I'm
Renee
doing
Good
right
after
now, is
you
that
called
I
them domestic
can't
terrorists.
even imagine what they have gone through in the loss of their son and the loss of their family members.
But
It's
how about
absolutely
specifically
tragic.
calling them
And I
domestic
sent
terrorists
them
without any evidence of
this.
that?
Sir, ma'am, I did not call him a domestic terrorist. I said it appeared to be an incident of.
Then, Republican Senator Tom Tillis didn't hold back on his feelings about Noem's overall job performance.
We just want numbers. We want 1,000 a day, 6,000 a day, 9,000 a day because numbers matter, right? No, they don't matter. Quality matters, not quantity, quality. And what we've seen is a disaster. Under your leadership, Ms. Noem, a disaster. What we've seen is innocent people getting detained that turn out are American citizens. I could talk about the culture that's been created here with Stephen Miller aiding and abetting. I heard first reports that he was the one that said it was a domestic terrorist situation where two people lost their lives in Minneapolis.
Here's where I land. Words do matter, especially when they come from top law enforcement official in the country. Labeling something, quote, domestic terrorism before investigations are complete isn't just descriptive, it's declarative. It tells the public how to feel before all the facts are known. Now, Noem has since declined multiple opportunities to directly apologize or even retract, and that has fueled bipartisan backlash. More than 160 House Democrats have supported impeachment efforts. Democratic leaders like Hakeem Jeffries have called for her firing. Senator John Fetterman and Elizabeth Warren have urged her to resign. Even Republican Senator Tom Tillis and Lisa Murkowski have publicly questioned her leadership. This isn't about politics for me. It's about accountability. If you speak too soon and it causes confusion and pain, the most human response is simple. Say you're sorry. Leadership doesn't mean never making mistakes. It means knowing when your words went too far and having humility to actually own it.
Well, you didn't play my favorite video clip from that hearing, which was Senator Kennedy, who's I just enjoy listening to him talk. He's so funny. He also went after her. Yeah, I think it goes to show that she's not particularly popular with even Republican members of the Senate. That speaks to the fact that There is internal disagreement about how effective she is in this role. There are elements within the administration, from what I understand, that find her unnecessarily showy. They don't like her or Corey Lewandowski, her chief advisor and close personal friend, and how involved he is in what's going on. And that, calling, I don't know how she, if you said engage in domestic terrorism, then you're saying someone's a domestic terrorist. And
right.
That was mistaken. So I don't know what you can do other than just say that was a mistake and I regret it.
And I think, we always talk about these hearings. They're used to clip out and campaign. We understand that. But I think if even Democratic senators have talked to the family of Alex Preddy, and his family knows that immediately, in the immediate aftermath, he was labeled that way. A conversation, even she can say, I've spoken to Alex Preddy's family. That it doesn't have to happen at the Senate hearing, so it can be clipped out and used for eternity. But I think, it's the same thing with the Epstein victims that are sitting in the hearings that just want to have a conversation and say they can't get in touch. I think if a mistake of that magnitude is made, or even if you're over speaking and still investigating in that way, you should try to connect with the American citizen involved, especially in an operation that you're trying to convince the American people is the way forward for immigration. And there's some friction on the way that immigration is being implemented. Not that people want immigration reform, but the way the administration is doing it. You're the top official and you're mischaracterizing this. I think that she could have at least reached out to the family or had some dialogue to clarify her words, even if it was in private.
Senator Kennedy also spoke to her about the amount of money her office spent on basically advertising, publicity. And he talked about how it's clearly good for you, but that it's embarrassing to spend that much amount of money. And he said he just couldn't believe that President Trump was okay with that because it's an embarrassing amount of money. And why are you trying to embarrass President Trump? It was an interesting line of questioning.
And why do you think that, President Trump is protecting her in this way? My theory is that he doesn't want any, I guess what you call maybe enemies out of the second term, people that he released from his
no one has left
top officials.
The cabinet yet.
Right. And we saw, that's way different from the first term. We saw a lot of people leave.
Right.
So you think he's just trying to protect his crew?
I don't know. He would have no qualms firing her if he thought that was a good idea, but maybe, I don't know. I don't have any insights into what the rationale is. She might head for the door at some point. Would not surprise me if she would be the first one to head for the door. What do we say about Tulsi Gabbard, for instance, is in the cabinet, and he's doing a foreign policy that could not be more contrary to what she has advised and always wanted. It's what she left the Democratic Party over.
Right.
That she thought they were going to start a war with Iran. And here we are. So, I don't know, but we're keeping the team together for now.
Interesting times. Up next, a Democratic rising star defeating Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett for the Democratic nomination. Stay with us. We're going to talk about that.
Big night in Texas. Primary ballots poured in to determine who will be the Democrat and Republican nominees for the Senate in the midterm elections this November, and a bunch of other races, too, of interest. Now, on the GOP side, incumbent Senator John Cornyn and challenger State Attorney General Ken Paxton will be heading to a runoff election in May. By all accounts, it's expected to be an expensive and a dirty fight for the nomination.
But the big news of the night came from the Democrats, where State Representative James Talarico beat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett to secure his party's nomination for Cornyn's Senate seat. But leading up to the primary, it wasn't clear that we would see results on election night. The state Supreme Court handed down an emergency decision yesterday, reversing a lower court's ruling that extended early voting hours in Dallas County. That came after a last-minute voting change in the Republican primary caused confusion and led to some Democratic voters showing up to the wrong polling location. As a result of that confusion, a Dallas County judge ordered polling places to stay open 2 more hours to give voters a chance to cast their ballots. But the state's high court overturned that, saying that any votes cast by the voters not in line by 7 p.m. should be separated. That ruling ultimately sparked allegations of voter suppression. Both Talarico and Crockett spoke out against that ruling last night. Take a listen.
This is what Republicans like to do.
They cheat all the time.
And so they specifically targeted Dallas County, and I think we all know why.
The voter suppression in my home county and in Congresswoman Crockett's home county underscores the gravity of this moment.
The ruling is temporary while the changes that caused the confusion are challenged in court. Voters who arrived late cast provisional ballots, and it's still unclear whether they'll ultimately be counted.
Despite that, the primary race was called late last night for Talarico, who secured about 53% of the vote, according to Decision Desk HQ. Crockett received just over 45%. Here was Talarico speaking to a watch party crowd just before the call was made.
We are not just trying to win an election. We are trying to fundamentally change our politics. And it's working. Tonight, the people of our state gave this country a little bit of hope. And a little bit of hope is a dangerous thing.
In the hours after the race was called, Democrats flocked to get behind their new Senate nominee, Texas Congressman Greg Casar, writing on X, James Talarico is the future of the Democratic Party. He unites working people of all kinds to take on the billionaires who are making life unaffordable. He's going to show Texas Republicans how powerful working people are when we stand together. Just this morning, Congresswoman Crockett conceded the race and called for party unity. Quote, Texas is primed to turn blue, and we must remain united because this is bigger than any one person. She said in a statement, with the primary behind us, Democrats must rally around our nominees and win.
Now, Mehdi Hassan echoing that cautious optimism, writing on X, Dems may have a chance in Texas in November. I think last night was the first moment of truth. You know, we have a long stretch of primaries coming up. I was looking at the schedule and the dates, like, okay. But, you know, we have a really opportunity. I think there's a big opportunity for Democrats because Republicans are now in disarray. I think for Paxton, having another election is probably his worst nightmare. For Cornyn, this was a great thing because he knew that he wasn't having the support that he needed from the young MAGA base and from some newer Republicans, but he knows that the establishment supported him, and he's going to keep having money poured into his campaign, which will make this a really dirty really dirty race. Ken Paxton has a lot of stuff that could go against him, and it could get really messy. We know that he's in a really bad divorce. We know that he has some allegations against him. So all this could come out with campaign spending. It could really get sloppy while Democrats have a firm candidate, Talarico, that can continually be propelled up. I mean, this man's a former school teacher. He's the person that took on the measured, balanced approach toward politics. He appeals to those independents for this general election and the people that maybe don't know which side of the aisle they fall on, that like President Trump's policies a little bit, but don't like his personality or the way that he behaves sometimes. So Talarico is going to continue to build on this momentum, and Republicans are going to keep fighting over the seat.
Yeah, look, Texas is a red state, so this is going to be a difficult one to pick up. Talarico is going to have to do like 6 points better than the typical Democratic nominee, or I mean, he has to make it up some way. He could do 3 points better, and the Republican does 3 points worse. You know, same difference. Yes, Democrats, I think, have set themselves up for success by saying no to Jasmine Crockett, who I think was going to have a very hard time statewide. And James Talarico looks like he might, his views are not, frankly, that moderate, but he comes across as a moderate or reassuring. I mean, you know, race plays into that a little bit. On the GOP side, you know, John Cornyn, the embattled incumbent, actually had a better night than I expected. Now, a good night would have been clearing the 50% threshold and winning outright and having no runoff, because there's 3 candidates in this race. Wesley Hunt.
Yeah, Wesley Hunt jacked it up for both of them.
Right, he got like
took 13% of the vote.
But most of Wesley Hunt's voters, their second choice is disproportionately Ken Paxton. So when it goes down to 2 of them, it is not clear that John Cornyn is going to win that. In fact, I would still say he's something of an underdog here. But what this means, because he finished first, if Ken Paxton had won this outright, even without getting 50% of the vote, Donald Trump was going to sweep in and was going to endorse Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton is the MAGA candidate. MAGA loves him. Turning Point USA endorsed him. He has a good relationship with Trump people. So he's courting. Trump has not weighed in. But this keeps Trump at bay because it's not clear. Trump doesn't want to endorse someone who's not going to go on to win. He would, you know, I'm sure his advisors are telling him, like, we could really, like, control of the Senate could hang in the balance of this race. I'm sure his advisors are telling him, and he's agreeing, no matter how much you might like Ken Paxton, we can't lose control of the Senate. So right. I'm sure they would rather John Cornyn be the nominee. But if Paxton's going to win the nomination, Trump wants to endorse him and get behind him and keep this and full-throatedly help and get him to defeat Talarico. This keeps it ambiguous enough that I see the White House sitting it out again for now, and that's, again, a win by default for Cornyn.
But also for President Trump, it's a decision between like your ego, or if you want to jump in, if he preferred Paxton and doesn't really love Cornyn, if he doesn't get involved, you're right, then I don't know that he'd want to do that to the detriment of his own party moving forward.
It doesn't sound like he dislikes John Cornyn. John Cornyn has not been, I get he's perceived as not being MAGA-y enough because he's not as like bombastic, and he doesn't have like very significant policy or even disagreements with Trump. If you compare to someone else who lost their primary, it was Dan Crenshaw, who is a kind of prominent Republican who has criticized Trump a little bit, has broken, is more of an old school Bush, John McCain neocon. He got crushed in his primary. He's gone. He's done. So John Cornyn isn't quite in that camp, I think.
And I think what Texas showed us is a larger picture, perhaps, for the appetite or the Democratic Party going forward. I think if we balance and look at what happened in New York and look at what happened in Texas, there's still a big, stark divide between what two dramatically different parts of the country want, like Mamdani or somebody way more moderate, Talarico.
Speaking of endorsements that didn't pan out, Kamala Harris, of course, had made her last-minute endorsement of Jasmine Crockett. Not enough.
Well, let me tell you why
Jasmine over the line.
I didn't know if that endorsement was actually that relevant, because in 2020, Democrats made major strides in Texas, which has started to get this energy that Texas could possibly turn blue one day. Wait, let me finish. In 2024, when Kamala ran, they fell back from the progress they had made. So I don't know that Kamala was that popular specifically in Texas.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Kamala's the kiss of death.
So I don't know. That's why I said I don't know that she would want that endorsement. And when everybody was like, yeah, Kamala jumped in too little too late, I was kind of like, well, she could have probably just...
Well, right. It would have been nice for Kamala if then Jasmine Crockett won and she could say, I helped get her over the line. I'm still relevant and important. I should be the presidential candidate. Didn't really pan out that way, Kamala. Sorry about that. Up next, Smoothie King fires 2 employees who allegedly refused to serve Trump supporters. We'll be right back after this.
Smoothie King announced that they fired 2 employees who allegedly refused to serve smoothies to Trump supporters at a location in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Those customers were Erica and Jane Lindemeyer.
They were asked to leave the store after an employee said that she felt uncomfortable serving Jake because of his sweatshirt featuring President Trump's name. Only in Ann Arbor, my college town. The social media post on Monday, Erica Lindemeyer wrote, I'm disgusted as an American citizen. I loved Smoothie King, was refused service over my husband's sweatshirt. Talk about discrimination. Jake Lindemeyer, please share this video. Let's make these 2 famous.
One of the employees reportedly set up a GoFundMe account titled Support for Safety After Online Harassment, but it has been taken down since. Another video circulating appears to show the employee's perspective. In it, she says, quote, we don't support that. Our company is not about that. We have the right to refuse service. We are not serving Trump supporters. Have a great day.
Smoothie King on Monday wrote on X, as a brand, Smoothie King is committed to ensuring our stores are a place free of discrimination of any kind, where every guest and every team member is treated with care and respect. Following an investigation into an incident involving this guest who was refused service at a franchise location in Michigan, the franchise owner has taken immediate action, and the 2 employees involved are no longer with the business.
So immediately when I saw this, I thought about I know. Did you make you feel?
I don't remember Smoothie King being there. Maybe it was.
It's a newcomer on the block.
I don't know if it was or not. Obviously, there's smoothie places. These very much Ann Arbor is a place where employees would
take liberties like that.
No, would refuse a Trump. It's like the most liberal, lefty, Marxist place on earth. So I can definitely imagine this happening, and you can't do that.
Well,
so
my first initial thought was thinking about that 2023 Supreme Court ruling that allowed. It said that basically if you're creating some content like a website, you don't have to serve to certain communities because of religious reasons. But that was personal business and personalized services. And they ruled in that particular case and told you that it's not a widespread thing for things that were already created and exist.
King could choose not to
so that's why
employees.
Right. That's why I said
actually,
even this with the same thing with the hotel. in Minneapolis, I believe, that decided they didn't want
Right,
to house
it's
ICE
the
agents. I
employee
think it's
going
just the
rogue.
idea that people are choosing the stance of an entire business that exists way beyond your choices. And so employees cannot make that type of decision. It's the difference between it being your business and you saying, this is what I, as the owner of like Gilded Focus Productions, don't want to produce this for you. But I also cannot tell you what Nexstar, News Nation, The Hill wants to do. I don't speak for the whole company. And so that is the biggest issue here.
Right. I don't. Your job is. You had one job. Your job was to make smoothies, to blend fruits into a delicious beverage, and someone walked in who wanted one, and you didn't give them one, so you lose your job. And you set up a GoFundMe. How pathetic.
So is there? Oh, there's been GoFundMe set up for worse stuff. So please,
there's lots of
GoFundMe. So please,
out there.
I think. Have you ever seen Curb Your Enthusiasm? The episode where Larry wore the "Make America Great Again" hat on purpose so people wouldn't speak to him.
Yes.
Okay, so there's this thing that you know exists in our society that makes it a little.
You're marked for tarring and feathering.
It makes it a little bit more friction if you're showing up with the hat or a Trump shirt. You know that Trump is he's an anomaly. It's not about him being Republican or conservative or even some of the policies.
The majority of the country voted for him.
Yes, but the way he behaves is not something that probably will be accepted again after him. Like we always talk about, it's a Trump thing. Right. It's not that J.D. Vance.
Nobody's going to not serve you, though, in your Che Guevara T-shirt, even though he was a mass murderer, communist thug. So it's very interesting, the standards we have for these things. But
look, I'm just telling you, maybe people are riled up because of the current climate President Trump creates when he says disparaging comments about whole communities, which you tend to kind of comb over and say, oh, that's just Trump. Some people think that's deeply offensive and may not want to serve the man.
Nothing
or anybody
worse
affiliated
than saying
with.
disparaging comments.
Yes, when you're the president of the United States,
when
you're the president of the United States, you should try to do better than to disparage whole communities of people for absolutely no reason.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but still serve me a smoothie.
I bet that they wanted that smoothie and they weren't able to get it, so they did actually do something that stopped these people from having a pleasant moment in their day. If that was the goal, they might not have a job. I can't stand by and support what they did, but I could say that if the goal was to throw a wrench was thrown.
There was a great milkshake place that I liked going to in Ann Arbor, but I can't remember what it was called.
If I say you got to send folks there because they'll obviously might serve maybe everyone.
I had a fun time. Missed my college days. Next up, that does it for us on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hill's YouTube channel so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. See you back here tomorrow.